everyone. Welcome to another episode of Security Shorts with Scott. Thank you as always for tuning in. And today we've got a great guest. We are covering a topic that we get asked about quite a bit, and there's been a significant amount of change in the industry and in sort of how threats are impacted by this technology in the last 5 years. So super excited to have Steve Staden with DNSFilter joining us. Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Great, thanks for having me, appreciate it.
So Steve, we always start off with something personal. Could be a hobby, it could be a funny story about your life or how you got into security. On your side, let's maybe talk about what do you do for fun outside of the day job?
Yeah, definitely. I really started to enjoy mountain biking. And we were actually, last year we went to Bentonville, which was kind of a mecca for the mountain biking community. Just out in France, and did some mountain biking for the first time, and kind of amazing to get a lot of covered terrain with the mountain bikes, and headed to the UP up in the Midwest to do some mountain biking in Copper Harbor next month. So I don't know, it's nice getting outside, unplugging, and seeing some green.
Yeah, the e-bikes seem to be the rage. I don't know if you're a purist and you feel like those are cheating, but I've got a lot of friends that have started doing those lately.
Yeah, when we went to Bentonville, we saw a lot of e-bikes, and we were all, remarking that seems like cheating. But then now that I've done it in France, I'm kind of like, is it really? Like, it's nice to actually do a lot more terrain, and you still get a good workout.
Yeah.
And to me, you can see a lot more, and it was enjoyable. With the extra power there.
And it probably opens it up to a wider, group of people versus sometimes people think mountain biking is, you got to be hardcore. So
right.
It's probably helpful in that aspect as well.
Yeah.
So Steve, let's talk a little bit about security. It's what we do, what we all live and breathe every day. Traditionally, there's been this view around, security and IP addresses. Way back in the day, it's like, hey, you can put an IP address block list in your firewall and make that all work. We know in today's world that's very different. You work with a company called DNSFilter, best in class, best in the world, amazing technology. But why don't you take a minute and just sort of give the high level of like, how does DNS filtering work?
Yeah, and I think to start, you kind of have to a little bit understand DNS, which is, it's often called the phone book of the internet, where it's matching both the numbers with the names. And basically, anytime you're going to a website, Amazon.com, there's a series of numbers behind that IP address that is correlated to. So anytime you're going out on the internet and typing anything, you're using DNS. So it is kind of in my mind, the most important protocol out there for internet. And if it goes down, it breaks the internet. But it's also unique in the fact that it's seeing all this traffic going out on the internet, and then able to basically understand what domains are being used and categorizing those correctly. So it's an interesting approach to security in my mind, where it covers a lot of area using that DNS layer.
Yeah, it makes sense, and that's a good background. When it comes to threats, how has the threat changed in a way where something like DNSFilter really matters in today's world? Again, maybe relative if somebody hasn't been keeping up on the latest, and then 3 to 5 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, and you brought up a kind of earlier about the list. So I think I would say like version 1.0 of DNS filtering or DNS protection was really around these static lists, and those still exist. That's a lot of what you see in most of the solutions are these various security or threat lists that can be used, and we definitely use that in the product. But I think the kind of 2.0 version has been more around machine learning, sometimes called AI, where it's actually looking at a series of markers to kind of determine the what that domain is going to end up being categorized as. Is it going to be something that's phishing? Because it's roughly about 100,000 domains that are created each day, and how many of those are going to be used for nefarious means is a big question then.
Yeah, and I think you're hitting it on the head there, which is I know a lot of customers that we talk to, they're familiar with the content filtering piece. So,
Right.
they are like somebody, who's going to be the porn police, who's going to keep, people out of poker, gambling sites, all that. But the threat has really moved. You said it perfectly. There's 100,000 domains created every day. And the nefarious actors hide behind those because they can really leverage pools of IP addresses faster. They can switch them out more quickly. And so the days of understanding the nefarious DNS is more important today than maybe understanding nefarious IP addresses, as those are more ephemeral and easier to change. And that's really where, the power of your technology comes in, because, the ability to understand those 100,000 domains and figure out which ones are useful versus which ones are nefarious is really a challenging prospect for the average, customer that's out there trying to make a widget.
Right, exactly.
One of the questions we get quite a bit is small businesses versus large businesses. And small businesses, call it 500 employees or 1,000 employees relative to, Goldman Sachs or Lowe's or Home Depot. Does DNS filtering matter, I guess, to the small and medium enterprise?
Yeah, I think it absolutely does. I mean, I think every business has to, make an evaluation on their security posture. But, when I look at small businesses, I was looking at a stat that, 99% of businesses out there are 500 people or less. So it's a huge attack surface when you think about it. Mm-hmm. And I imagine a lot of these businesses are using the internet for one thing or another. And so you've got a lot of folks making requests to different websites, and you're not over there watching every request, but DNSFilter can be. So that, I think, is where we kind of shine, where, again, it's an interesting notion to use DNS as a security tool to really understand where folks are going on the internet and then blocking any of those threat actors. And it's not just going to websites, but if you're getting an email that's maybe a phishing email and it has a link in there, that's also something where DNSFilter will look as soon as that's clicked and make a consideration. Is this a phishing attack, and block it immediately, or let the traffic go if not?
It's a great point. The stats right now, 60% of breaches are starting actually from harvested credentials. So most people still think that organizations are being breached by a piece of software code. But generally, something like what you just talked about, click on a link, put your username and password into a site that isn't legitimate, and now they're obviously accessing the customer's infrastructure, with legitimate credentials, but not by legitimate ID or user. Right. Which goes, I guess, to one of the questions that comes up also a lot, which is, we know that EDR and EPP is super important in today's world. But I get a lot of customers that are like, hey, if I just have managed EDR, isn't that the silver bullet? Doesn't that protect me against everything? Why would I need anything else? So maybe you could take a minute and talk about how does DNS protection work with EDR, EPP, and why do you need sort of two different capabilities?
Yeah, and when I think about EDR and EPP, I mean, that's very much looking at the endpoint itself and seeing what activity is already happening and any remediation that needs to be done. It's not looking at the user as they're going out and taking any action, going out to the internet, click on any link. And I think what I see from most of our clients is a layered approach using both of these solutions in conjunction. So both EDR and DNS protection, DNS filtering, kind of as their security stack. And whether it's a MSP or a small business, I think these solutions work hand in glove, really, to protect the business, a lot more than just one alone.
Yeah, agreed. Obviously our customers know that both of them come in the stack that we sell for foundational coverage, because there are gaps that have to be covered, and they work really, really well together. And this you hit something around small businesses and what are they trying to do and cover, and going out to the web. We've seen work from home obviously be a massive transition. And to me, when you look at work from home and the fact that maybe almost all companies we work with are either completely work from home or at least hybrid, DNS protection is really important when you start thinking about laptops and network. We all used to think about the hardened perimeter, firewalls, IDSs, maybe even DNS protection that you had at the egress points of your network. But now if you've got 500 people all working from all over the world, again, how does DNSFilter sort of look at that from a safety standpoint and help solve and keep those employees safe?
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the mark with back when folks were in the office, there was the firewall at the edge. Well, that's changed with people working from home, working from a coffee shop, and not being in the office anymore. So, the question is, how do you protect them, no matter where they are? And I think that's, again, great part about DNS. So we've got there's different deployment options. You can have an endpoint or an agent on your machine that's constantly running, that is looking at all that activity, logging it, reporting it, and obviously blocking it. And there's other options too as a site deployment that you can configure in your router. But that's when you're in the office. And I think the biggest thing is with folks on laptops or roaming around is having an agent on their machine that's protecting them.
Yeah, and that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand is they still think of DNSFilter happening at the perimeter of a network. But when the network is the work from home laptop, the endpoint agent that you guys have is really effective.
Right, exactly.
So Steven, I think that's it on my side as far as questions. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with when it comes to just things to think about or what you see sort of coming down the road when it comes to security and the internet and how that applies into DNS and what the attackers are using? Yeah,
and I think it's been interesting for me. Like I remember in the 2000s in DNS being people didn't know a ton about it until it hit the news when I think 9 of the 13 root servers went down and the internet almost came to a screeching halt. And it's amazing to think about it. And here we are, 20 years later, now it's a protection mechanism that even the NSA and CISA put together a protective DNS solution, giving out to kind of government agencies for free because they see like how fruitful that has been to use the DNS layer for security. So I see that growing, especially for really all businesses, but small businesses who are, I saw another stat that was like 80% of ransomware attacks are against small businesses. And, that is where more of the focus has been on attack, especially with the larger attack surface rather than, the Wall Streets going and looking at the Main Street companies. So I think you'll see more prevalence towards DNS protection as a mechanism that covers a lot of area. As we leverage like machine learning more, I think you're just going to see more efficacy in terms of finding these domains in real time as they get registered. So I'm excited to kind of see that happen and really just protecting folks as we go forward.
Awesome, sir. Well, Steve, pleasure to spend some time with you. Thanks for joining Security Shorts with Scott. And to the audience, as always, thanks for tuning in. If there's any questions, you can reach out to both of us. We'll have our emails and contact information in the link below. And with that, thank you for joining Security Shorts with Scott.
Thanks. Appreciate it.